From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Saturday, March 8th, which means you're listening to a special weekend edition of the podcast featuring the Capitol Recap. Coming up, lawmakers in Montpelier scrambled to make changes to the state's cannabis retail regulations amid concerns that small growing operations may be forced out of business. That's after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from VIDA, supporting business growth and innovation in the Green Mountain State. From agriculture to manufacturing, energy to food production, find solutions that turn your business dreams into reality. Visit VEDA.org and see how VIDA can help make it happen.
Vermont's retail cannabis marketplace has been open for roughly 2.5 years, and lawmakers are now considering some important changes. If these changes aren't made, there's concern some retailers and small growers will be forced out of business. Vermont Public's senior political reporter Bob Kinzel looked into the issue for this week's edition of the Capitol Recap, and he joined host Jen Jarecki to share his reporting.
Okay, Bob, so what are some of the key issues that lawmakers are expected to address in the coming weeks in this cannabis bill?
Jen, I think the biggest issue is the saturation of stores in some parts of the state. Right now, there are roughly 110 stores in Vermont, and many are clustered in certain communities. For instance, Burlington has around 13 stores, Rutland has 7, and Morrisville has 5. David Silberman owns a retail store in Middlebury and is part of the Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont. He's very concerned about the future because he says Vermont has more retail stores per capita than most states in the country.
There are towns of extreme concentration, but the market is saturated statewide. This is bad. One store for every 5,700 residents. That's not a business model that works.
Jen, one approach to this issue was taken in Wilmington on town meeting day. They have 2 stores there, and voters have now closed the door on any future stores in that community.
What's the plan to deal with this issue?
Jen, most of the discussion focuses on this question. Should there be a 2-year statewide moratorium on all new retail licenses? Now, the House Government Operations Committee is the lead committee in the House considering changes to the cannabis law. Virginia's representative, Matt Birong, is the chair of the committee.
And now the question we're asking ourselves is, do we need something more clearly defined for a halt for an interim period of time to let the market sort of settle with the amount of operators that are going up at the retail space and not see the mistakes of other states transpire here, where we saw a lot of clustering and then a lot of people go out of business.
The committee will vote on this bill next week, and it's possible that their proposal will include a 2-year statewide moratorium.
Well, what does the state's regulatory agency, the Cannabis Control Board, think about that 2-year moratorium?
Jen, they don't support it, and they're backing a different approach. Essentially, they're developing rules that would allow the board to reject a new license in a community that already has some stores. So it's not a statewide moratorium. It's reviewing licenses on a town-by-town basis, and this is authority that the board does not have right now. James Pepper is the chairman of the board.
We have rules that have been drafted based upon municipal populations and some consideration of regional populations. We'd like to fine tune those and see how they work before we kind of put a true, long lasting moratorium on new retail licenses.
Pepper says he's also very concerned that once a moratorium is put into place, it will be very difficult to get rid of it.
Some of the smaller growers say they're having serious problems getting their products into stores because there's too much supply at this time and there's no shelf space left for them. Bob, what changes are they calling for?
Well, ultimately, Jen, they want to be able to sell their state-regulated products directly to consumers. And the concept might be started by allowing some growers to sell their products in a setting like a farmer's market under the auspices of a licensed retailer. Ben Wilcox is a small grower in Sutton.
I grow 125 plants, and if I could sell a plant here and there to local people, it would help buffer against the price collapse that we're hearing about.
James Pepper at the Cannabis Control Board thinks this is an issue worth exploring, perhaps with a small pilot program. Now, this approach might also need the support of the Vermont Agriculture Agency, but this step could be further than Governor Phil Scott wants to go at this time, so we'll be watching this issue very closely.
Bob, are there any other proposals that people think should be taken to encourage consumers to buy cannabis products through the state's regulated system?
Jen, one idea that has some support is an effort to reduce the state's overall cannabis tax rate. Now, right now, all products are subject to a combined tax rate of 20%. That includes the 6% sales tax and a 14% excise tax. However, this approach does face some serious challenges, and that's because the sales tax revenue provides roughly $8 million for after-school programs, and part of the excise tax is dedicated to youth prevention drug programs. So in a tough budget year, and that's what we have this year, it might be hard to pass this tax cut.
So what happens next?
The House Government Operations Committee is scheduled to vote on this bill next week. It will then be reviewed by several other House committees, and it's expected to be on the floor for a vote in just a few weeks. Now, if it passes, it then goes to the Senate for its consideration. And in the past, Jen, the Senate has looked at some of these cannabis-related issues quite differently from the House, so there could be some key changes. Now, backers of the bill really want it to pass this year. So look for the House and Senate to try to negotiate a final compromise, and that compromise would then be reviewed by the governor.
That was Vermont Public's senior political reporter Bob Kinzel speaking with host Jen Jarecki about proposed changes to Vermont's retail cannabis marketplace. You can follow us at vermontpublic.org to stay on top of all our legislative coverage and sign up for our weekly Capitol Recap newsletter to get all the news out of Montpelier from our team of State House reporters. Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. Our executive producer is Kevin Trevelyan, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. Talk to you Monday.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.